Hey, it's Jordan with TYT, TYT Network, Wednesday, June 15th. Hope everyone's doing okay. Bernie Sanders came out very, very strong yesterday in Washington, D.C., held a press conference where he pretty much listed some concrete, doesn't sound like he's going to budge type of demands on the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton.
We need, at the Democratic National Convention, to approve a progressive platform, the most progressive platform ever passed by the Democratic Party, a platform which makes it crystal clear that the Democratic Party is in fact on the side of working people, is on the side of low-income people, is on the side of people who have no health insurance, and is prepared to stand up to the powerful corporate interest whose greed is doing so much harm.
I think if you read in between the lines, you could read a lot about what he's really saying. I'm going to go through those demands and tell you what I think. So first and foremost, he told reporters he basically wants Debbie Wasserman Schultz removed as DNC chair immediately. He didn't mention her name. He was more diplomatic, saying leadership change at the Democratic National Committee, but everybody knows that's Debbie Wasserman Schultz. We all know the problems he's had with her, rightly so. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was co-chair to Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2008, stacked the deck against him from the start. First debate that I covered was on a Saturday night, the week before Christmas. Really planned the debates to be at times nobody would watch. Very inopportune and terrible exposure for the Democrats. Most people think that was to help Hillary Clinton. Republicans, meanwhile, had all their debates in primetime during the week. So that was one thing. That demand probably will be met. Hillary Clinton's loyalty is to Hillary Clinton. She's not going to, hold on to her vigilance and support for Debbie Wasserman Schultz if it means Bernie Sanders not endorsing her. So I think you could see Debbie Wasserman Schultz gracefully resigning or stepping aside to a new role before the Democratic Convention. So that was the first demand Bernie Sanders made in this press conference. The next one, open primaries. Obviously, the Democratic Party is arcane primary rules. A lot of states are closed primaries where only Democrats could vote. In New York, I documented many times that they had these rules where you had to register as a Democrat 6 months before the actual primary. Most people weren't paying attention then. Most people didn't have their minds made up whether they wanted Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, maybe they wanted to vote Republican, who knows. So Bernie Sanders is proposing open primaries. His words, the idea that in the great state of New York, 3 million people could not participate in helping to select who the Democrat or Republican candidate for president would be because they had registered as an independent and not as a Democrat or Republican is incomprehensible. He went on to say he wants adequate staffing. We now take it for granted, but we should not. In this process, we have gone through a situation in Arizona where people waited online 5 hours to cast their votes.
Who's to blame for these long lines?
Well, the voters for getting in line.
How many tens of thousands of people simply gave up their rights to vote and walked away? He also said, we need to make sure in California and other states that the votes get counted. We need major changes. In California, votes are still being counted. Obviously, Bernie, at this point, has lost by 11 percentage points. That could go down. There's hundreds of thousands of votes still to be counted, including provisional ballots. I'm not saying that it's going to mean he wins California, but it shouldn't be that you don't have enough staffing, you don't have enough resources where you're still counting votes weeks after the primary. They're still counting votes in Puerto Rico. So Bernie Sanders is rightfully so talking about we need more adequate staffing and resources to these contests. If you want to have it on a state-by-state level where every state has their own rules, that's fine, but you need to actually have the staffing so you don't have 5-hour lines in Arizona. You don't have crazy lines in Wisconsin where I went, and New York, and the list goes on and on and on. Bernie Sanders also asked for same-day registration. Same thing I just said. In New York, 6 months before you have to register. In other states, a lot of these deadlines to register as a Democrat or Republican are arcane. In California, it was very confusing what you have to register as to vote. Some people are wrongly registered as NPP and other things. So it should be same-day registration in America. You go, you sign a form, you're registered. But it's not that way because many states, led by Republican governors, but also by Democratic governors, want to suppress the vote, and they don't want the most people voting, particularly in the Democratic primaries. You look at places like New York and other places, why would you have such rules that demand you sign up for registration months before? Because you know most people aren't going to do that, and most people aren't paying attention. Thus, you're not going to have the influx of millennials or grassroots activists supporting a candidate like Bernie Sanders be able to register in time to vote, thus propping up a candidate like Hillary Clinton. So Sanders is calling for open primaries as well. Same-day registration. And he's also very, very clearly and very, very passionately has called for the removal of superdelegates.
We also need, obviously, to get rid of superdelegates. The idea that we had, in this case, 400 superdelegates pledged to a candidate some 8 months or more before the first ballot was cast is, to my mind, absurd.
If that's not stacking the deck against a candidate, I don't know what is. Particularly when you have the media complicit in continuing to bake in the superdelegates into the overall count, thus to the low information voter, making it seem like Hillary Clinton was up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of delegates this whole time when she was not up that amount of delegates. I think when you stack up removing superdelegates, when you stack up open primaries, when you stack up same-day registration, when you stack up getting rid of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, when you stack up the specific demands for the DNC convention platform, what you have is two things. Number one, I think Bernie Sanders is telegraphing to Hillary Clinton, I am not going to endorse you, and I am not going to drop out of this race until my demands are met to a satisfactory degree. Now, does Bernie Sanders think he's going to get all these things? Probably not. But unlike President Obama, who at many times started negotiations halfway to the other person, Bernie Sanders is starting it all the way to what he wants, which in business is what you do. I think that Bernie Sanders is also telegraphing to Hillary Clinton, I'm wise to how you pretty much pivot to the center in all of your campaigns and how you've pretty much flip-flopped on many major issues. So I am not just asking for a platform just for the hell of a platform, but I'm going to hold you to that platform. So if you agree to certain language in the platform, but then in the general election, you start pivoting away from this language to, quote, triangulate to the center, as the Clintons are known for, don't think that my endorsement is just going to hang out there and I'm not going to call you out. Remember, Bernie Sanders is an independent. He ran as a Democrat, but he's been an independent most of his career. So he doesn't have a very, very inherently strong loyalty to the Democratic Party. His loyalty is to the issues and to his policy proposals. So I think what he's saying in proposing all these things and asking for the superdelegates and all these other things is, you're not going to just get my endorsement, and even if you have it, I'm not going to go out there and carry your water if you're not honoring these things. So I think in the hour-and-a-half meeting that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders had last night, I think he was very bluntly, in the Bernie Brooklyn type of way, saying, listen, politics is politics, but there's no moving to the center. You need to meet these progressive policy demands, and you need to satisfy and sell my supporters. I could endorse you, but my supporters are fed up, and they're not going to support you. More importantly, they might support you if I endorse you or be more open to you, but my supporters like me will turn on you in a dime if you start pivoting to the center. We're wise to that, and we see that. I think the second thing that Bernie Sanders is setting up, Bernie Sanders is not forgetting that no matter what happens, he does plan to go back to the U.S. Senate. And I think what Bernie Sanders realizes now is, unlike years ago when he did things like filibuster on Bush tax cuts and other things, now when he continues to be a progressive thorn in potentially a President Clinton's side, he's going to have an army behind him, and he's going to have a movement behind him, whether that's thousands on the steps of Capitol Hill, or thousands on social media, or thousands more voting for progressive candidates. So I think what he's trying to do is telegraph, yes, I might endorse you here, but if you think that you're just going to basically, say whatever you got to say to satisfy Bernie Sanders now, and then come you actually getting into the White House, I'm going to step aside, think again. I think Bernie Sanders is basically telegraphing that he is not going to be a loyal foot soldier for for Hillary Clinton, because Bernie Sanders, at the end, he is loyal to the issues he's been voicing for years and years and years, basically 40 years. So I think it's twofold. He's talking about, in the short term, I might endorse you, but don't think that you're just going to, do the Etch-a-Sketch like Mitt Romney was famous for, move to the center, try to, as we've reported, court Jeb Bush donors and other Republicans, and I'm just going to continue to go out there and, hey, feel the burners, you need to vote for Hillary Clinton. And I think he's also trying to set up and establish a very concrete set of policy proposals and demands so that if she becomes president, from the start, it's well known what she should expect. That he's not going to be a loyal foot soldier on the Senate. He has no problem filibustering her and her proposals if she flips on things like the TPP and other things. So I think what he's doing is playing the short-term game and the long-term game. He's also telegraphing not just to Hillary Clinton, but to other establishment Democrats, the Harry Reids of the world, the Chuck Schumers of the world. The list goes on of establishment corporate-backed Democrats. You're next. If you continue to placate Wall Street, big oil, I'm coming for you too. Bernie Sanders has nothing to lose, and he has the leverage. Does he want Donald Trump to become president? No, he does not. I think he will do everything he can to stop that from happening, even if it means him going out and campaigning technically for Hillary Clinton, but without really endorsing her, without really supporting her strongly, more of an anti-Trump campaign. You could see that happening.
Hillary Clinton's going to be a horrible president.
I think Hillary would be a terrible president.
Hillary Clinton doesn't want that. Hillary Clinton wants him to go out against Trump, but also to support her, because she has an uphill climb to get you and to get his supporters. And I think if Trump, who knows, begins to soften his tone, begins to realize, wow, I can't be so outwardly racist, begins to talk about the economy more, which he does poll well on as a businessman, begins to attack her more on things like her emails, on, the secrecy, on, the donations and all these things. Donald Trump is going to be competitive in the polls. Right now, he's down, I think, about 10 to 12 points, depending on the poll. But that's after he went after a Mexican judge. That's now after them doubling down on the Muslim ban. This race is going to be closer. So what you saw from Bernie Sanders yesterday is a declaration to Hillary Clinton and the establishment. I'm not endorsing you anytime soon until my demands are met. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she could go take a vacation in Florida. She's not going to be the DNC chair for long. I think that the Democrats, if you're looking at one thing they'll be open to, they're not going to cave on open primaries because they don't want open primaries, because that means they actually have to change their message to appease to independents. If every contest was an open primary, Bernie Sanders would have won by a landslide and would have been the nominee by now. I do think you could potentially see them caving a little bit on superdelegates. I don't think they'll abolish superdelegates, but I think they will decrease the number of superdelegates. Right now it's at 15%. You might see it go down to between 7 and 10%, with also tweaking of the rules where if a candidate like Bernie Sanders wins by an overwhelming margin in Washington State and other states, that the superdelegates in those states have to honor the will of the people if it's by a wide margin. In terms of same-day registration, I don't think you're going to get same-day registration universally, but I think they might tweak some rules where you don't see in New York, where it's 6 months before the deadline you have to register. So Bernie's going to get a lot of what he wants, but to me, what he did yesterday is not as much about the specific nitty-gritty, but more to send a message to Clinton and the establishment Democrats, rallying and crying and leaking through the media to write columns saying, fall in line, bow out now for the good of the party. He's telling them not going to happen. And I think he's also telling them, don't think that even if I endorse you, that endorsement is going to, be loud and proud throughout the primary if you're pivoting to the center, what Cenk and I call lying. And I think he's also telegraphing for a future President Clinton, if it happens, that this senator is not going to carry your water. So very strategic on Sanders' part, and we'll see what happens. The story of Bernie Sanders is not over. Whether he formally suspends his campaign, which I don't see happening, there's really no reason for him to do that. He does have leverage. All the votes have not been cast in California. I do think you're seeing him stand by his principles and, basically pick policy over politics. The smart political thing for him to do for his future would have been to bow out by now, but he's never been a politician, and that's probably, in some ways, why his movement exploded the way it did, and in a lot of ways, why he didn't win. A politician would have never let her slide on her emails. A politician would have went a lot further in going after her on her donations and not let pass by moments in debates and interviews where he could have, pointed out the quid pro quo examples. That's not Sanders' style, for better or for worse. I think it didn't help him, but that's who he is. You're not going to change a 74-year-old politician who's been this way for years. So I'll keep following Bernie Sanders, whether he's the president, whether he's the nominee or not. I think he's an important figure in the progressive movement and American politics. So that's my video blog for the day. You could watch my blog from yesterday on Hillary Clinton's scandals keep piling up. The video goes through recent examples of shady behavior, shady donors that has been swept under the rug since the media is rightly so covering the Orlando shooting, but who knows if they're going to actually go back and cover these things. And I'll be doing more videos as the week goes on. Thanks for watching.